Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to GEEXX Reads. Today I'm going to talk about the book The Emperor's Blades, an image of which you will see here. It's a big book, very thick, by Brian Staveley. Okay, minor spoilers. I'll try and keep it to a minimum as I usually do. This book centers around the three children of the Emperor. There is Caden, who is the heir to the throne, who is off on the far reaches of the empire at a monastery, studying under the Silent Brotherhood, who serve the blank god. Valen, who has been sent to train with the Ketrel. The Ketrel are a group of elite warriors used for special missions. They're trained in sabotage and sniping and things like that. And the sister, Arden, is in the capital, who in the most recent act was elevated to Minister of Finance. This was a controversial decision because this is very much a patriarchy, and a lot of the men are misogynistic and do not think women should hold offices of power. Women cannot sit on the throne. Little backstory: the line of emperors, this family, are seemingly blessed by the gods. Their eyes glow. So Caden's eyes glow. He's the heir to the throne. Valen, the middle, I think he's middle child, his eyes do not glow. So he is unable to sit on the throne. And Arden, who is a woman whose eyes do glow, she can't sit on the throne. Anywho, these are three different plot lines going through the story. When we first meet Caden, he is trying to find a lost goat from the monastery. He was, out tracking the goat and finds it slaughtered by some unknown creature, butchered in a way that a bandit wouldn't do, or any of the, various predators of the mountains would do. Valen, as the first time we see him in a training exercise, they've come across a boat that appears to have been attacked by pirates. All the crew is dead. And when we first meet Arden in the capital, the emperor has been murdered. So that's not giving away anything. It's on the back cover of the book. It's part of the plot line. So because these three siblings are spread out across the continent, they learn of their father's death at various times. Valen learns second that his father has been killed. He also learns that there's a plot against the crown and against the royal family. Caden is the last one to find out because he is months away from the capital where these events happen. We spend a lot of time with some of these kids. We spend less time with Arden in the capital. We spend most of our time with Caden and Valen. These two sons are both in training. They are, Caden is not a full monk, and as the heir to the throne, he will not become a full monk. He wonders why he's been sent there. He's been there for 8 years. Sent there as a young boy. And he's been learning meditation, mental techniques, things of that nature. The only thing really useful that might help him, and that he's aware of that might help him in taking the throne eventually, is the monks place high value on what they call the vanite, the ability to completely remove all emotion from oneself, and to make dispassionate decisions as an emperor would be useful. Valen knows he will never take the throne. He views being sent to the Ketrel to study. The Ketrel are actually large predatory birds that are capable of carrying several soldiers at once. So they're used for, like I said, special missions. They have demolitionists, snipers with bows and crossbows, people adept at poisons, people adept at, lurking in the dark, killing with knives. They're, this special elite fighting force that, is feared even more than the Royal Guard. So, he feels that though his father sent him here, he views this as his way of being valuable to the family, being valuable to the empire. Although we don't actually get to meet him, their father, the emperor, sounds like a decent enough guy. We're seeing this through the eyes of his children, two of whom have not seen him in 8 years since they were sent off for their training. And as we learned about this existing plot against the royal family, we're as much in the dark as the three siblings are. You know, Caden doesn't learn about it till much later till almost the end of the book, really, that there's a plot going on. But we know it's there, so we know, Valen's trying to find out who's responsible for the plot, but he's also been told not to trust anyone, that anyone could be in on the plot. So he doesn't know who to trust amongst his fellow cadets, amongst his trainers, amongst the full soldiers in the Ketrel. And then when we switch to point of view to Caden, like, which of these monks here are potentially going to kill him when they find out the Emperor is dead? And of course, Arden is right in the middle of the plot. She thinks she knows who's responsible for killing her father, and she plans on taking measures to deal with that. And being a young woman in a patriarchy and a misogynistic society, she has to step very carefully. She could very easily annoy the wrong person, even someone who's not necessarily involved in the plot of trying to overthrow her family and kill her family. There's enough, distrust of women in positions of power that could undo her all by itself, which I'm sure some people are rooting for. And we move back and forth. We see, we spend a lot of time with Caden. It's mostly about his training and about his not understanding what the purpose of this training is. He assumes that it must have some value because his father sent him here. But beyond that, he's just dealing with, this living as a monk stuff. And the fact that, a goat was slaughtered mysteriously does rear its head from time to time. How is that related to this plot? Is it related to this plot? Is it part of something else? Are some ancient enemy of the Empire coming back to haunt them? We don't know. It's hinted that there was an ancient enemy to the Empire, thousands of years ago. There was an ancient race called the Sestrum, who were powerful warriors, powerful sorcerers, but they were all defeated thousands of years ago. So they're mentioned throughout the book, mostly by Caden. He's the one who's studying. Valen has to deal with, his training is very, very physical, very combat-oriented, tactical-oriented. And as with any group of people, some of the cadets are not nice people, especially a group being trained as essentially assassins. Not quite that specifically, but they're being trained to kill people efficiently and quickly, and to do it without getting caught. So some of the personalities who might be attracted to that sort of job are unpleasant characters. There is also the rules of the Ketrel themselves. They are not allowed to marry or have children. So the group of young people in their teens and early 20s, there are, of course, some tensions going on that need to be dealt with. There's an interesting cast of characters around these three siblings. As I said, we spend the least amount of time with Arden in the capital. One, two. There's really only, in a book this thick, maybe half a dozen chapters for her. Maybe a bit more. I'm trying to do this, from memory. There really didn't seem to be too much going on with her. There's the funeral, there's the dealing with it afterwards, there's the assumption of the man that she knows who killed him. There's, like I said, there's probably maybe 4 to 6 chapters with Arden in it, so not too much. So there's really only a few characters around her we get to know. With Caden, we get to know some of his fellow novices. There's several of those, with various temperaments that we get to know. You know, one who was basically just a street scoundrel, others who were, mischievous in other ways, but well-meaning. And then there are the monks themselves, um, and the head abbot. We get to meet all these characters. And then with Caden, there's his fellow cadets, the ones he likes, the ones he associates with, the ones he kind of doesn't get along with, and then the ones he outright hates. So there's all these multiple storylines going on, and I found it very interesting in a lot of ways. We'll talk about the things I didn't like in a moment. I really like the world building. There's not a lot of magic going on. There is some. I'll talk about the magic system in a moment. But Brian Staveley's really built a world that feels lived in. You know, there's the history of the royal family, but they also talk about other things. Not, this world has a lived history that goes back centuries, and it feels believable, I guess you could say. You know, the characters behave in ways that are realistic within their circumstances and their situations. So I really enjoyed the character building and the world building that he's done. The magic system I find is very interesting. People who can use magic are called leeches in this book because they draw their power from something else. Now, there's a lot of superstition and hatred about leeches, that they drink baby's blood to get their power, that kind of thing. That they're evil, vile, corrupt, abominations of nature. That's not true, but each leech gets their power from what they call a well. That well could be anything, but each well is only a single thing. They could get their power. Their well could be iron or gold or ivory or jade or granite or water or sunlight or shadow or blood, or emotions. Something subtle. It could be animals. They could draw their power. And because people don't, if you know what a leech's well is, you can deprive them of their power, because it's where they get all their magical power from, is from their well. And so if you know what that is, you could take it away from them and make them just ordinary people. And so leeches tend to have a lot of subterfuge, a lot of distractions. The two that we see the most of are with Valen. And like one of them both of them wear lots and lots of jewelry of various types of materials: wood, stone, gold, jade, iron, silver, whatever they can get their hands on. They wear like bracelets and rings and earrings and belt buckles. The other one has animal pets. He's got 2 large dogs and a hawk. So there's all these things, false flags, to try and distract people and make it hard for them to figure out where you get your power from. So even though they're feared and not liked, the Empire still will make use of them when it's practical. Gotta be practical about holding on to your throne. I did find this book hard to get through oddly enough, because of the multiple viewpoints. Now, some of my favorite books of all time have multiple viewpoints. The Stand is the best example of that I can point out. The Stand is easily in my top 10 of all time favorite books. And that's, definitely through multiple viewpoints. The Way of Kings, a couple other ones I can point out here, but those are the two that come to mind the top of mind. But with this book, I found that, say we were doing a chapter about Caden. We had like a couple chapters about him and about what's going on with him, and then it would switch to Valen, and it's like, wait, I'm interested in what's going on with Caden. I don't care about Valen at the moment. I want to find out what's going on with Caden. So I have to put the book down for a little while. It's like, okay, I don't want to read anymore right now because I'm not interested in what's happening with Valen. So I wait a day, maybe 2, and pick the book up again. So, okay, I'm ready now to switch stories and find out what's going on with Valen. And then I read a couple chapters about Valen and get really invested and really interested in what's going on with him. And then it would switch back to Caden again. It's like, I don't care about Caden right now. I want to figure out what's going on. So then again, I put the book down for a couple days, go back to Caden. And then I'd read a couple chapters about Caden, and then it would switch to Arden. It's like, but I don't care. I want to find out what's going, the way in which the individual story brackets would end they would end more on like a high peak, as opposed to kind of like a downward, slowing down. I'd become invested. I'd become interested to the point where I didn't want to read about the other characters anymore. And I think that's what those other books that I mentioned, multiple point of view books that I mentioned, do better, is that they don't leave me on the edge of my seat wanting more for that. I mean, I do. I'm invested with the characters, but not to the point where I don't want to read the other chapters. So that's my one real criticism of this book. And all said and done, that's not a bad thing. It's just the way my brain was working made it hard for me to switch gears. Some of that's with the writing, some of that's with my brain. But the book is interesting enough that I will probably keep going. It's a trilogy. When did this, I think, looking at the, yeah, this book came out a while ago. The sequel, the sequel came out in January 2015, so over a decade ago. So this series is old by today's standards. I have no idea how long this thing has been sitting on my shelf. I know one of my kids got it for me as like a birthday or Christmas present, and it's just been sitting over there. I forgot about it because I'd put it in with the other. Usually I keep the books I haven't yet read separately, but I had, signed it alphabetical order and stuck it in there, and then I forgot about it. So I'm just getting to it now. I know I've had it for over a year now. But yes, I will probably buy the second book. But I'm intrigued. I think, like I said, I like the characters. I like the world building and the settings. And yeah, I want to find out where this is going to go. It kept us completely in the dark about who was involved in any of these plots until the very end. And I'm not sure if it was a shock or not, because at that point I suspected everybody. Almost everybody. So yeah, at the time the reveal finally came of who was involved in the plot, I suspected every single person around them. So I was just so suspicious by the end. Anyway, I really, really did like this book. It just wasn't as much of a page turner as I normally get into. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.